dance or a braid or a weaving, where the horizontal could be more of a knotting. And of course, when we're aware of the horizontal energies, we can change it into vertical energies. I mean, I think it was Mother Teresa who had a beautiful saying over one of her doorways that was the poem Anyway. And I don't remember all of the poem, but the last couple of lines were, it's really not about you and me, it's about me and my higher power anyway.
Right.
So it is that from horizontal to vertical. So whenever there's an issue or a problem, to consider that it really is within me to be able to make the changes that I need to, that I have the ability to do that vertically. And it's important with young children, again, because they live a vertical life. They live a vertical life. And they're here, so many years ago, Pierre Desjardins has this beautiful saying, quote that we often use in the world, and that is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so sacred parenting is meeting the spirit when it becomes human, at that intersection, and helping with the conscious onboarding of a soul into life. And so that doesn't necessarily happen at one specific point, but it happens over the grace of, in my experience, over the grace of 7 years. I say 7 years because at around age 6 is when a child enters the reasoning mind. It's when they are now fully able to have their own opinions. They debate with you. They're ready to have the lemonade stand. They're really fully conscious in the world at that point. And I don't mean as fully conscious as a 12-year-old, for example, but compared to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old who is still in this vertical alignment. Excuse me. And children are natural mystics. So if we can be aware and alert and sacredly curious, I call it, sacredly curious in those early years and early months and all, that they are telling us who they are because they don't know anything else to say or to do or to be. So if we can pick up on those clues, then we can help reflect it back to them, because when they can see who they are, they can be who they are.
And that's what you were speaking to earlier when you were saying that children give us clues of who they are and who they are here to be, right? You're speaking to that same point. Yeah.
Yes. So really one of our roles is to be like a treasure hunter. What are these clues? And whatever metaphor works with us as parents, as grandparents, as teachers and healers, as doulas, as aunts and uncles, when we are around and nurturing a young child, it's about looking for the hidden treasures, and they're only hidden because the child doesn't know to bring them out yet. So it's not like they're intentionally hiding, but they have not yet unfolded themselves, and that's what this process, this over 7 years, is honoring, is that precious unfolding of the child.
Can you give us an example of that, Kathleen, how helping to discover those hidden, how did you call that? I'm going to call it gems.
The hidden gems?
Treasure, the hidden treasure. Well, how the child has these, but how can you give us an example of how you have how you helped that out?
Well, I can give yes. For example, a pregnant woman may find herself, if she is able to stay in some kind of vertical alignment, even temporarily, even periodically, she may find herself drawn to things that she would not normally be drawn to. One of my clients, for example, never wore red. With one of her pregnancies, she was so drawn to wearing red, she couldn't understand it. She always wore pastels and all of this. She didn't fight it. She bought red pregnancy dresses. She was giving keynotes and all these beautiful things. And when her child was born, it was obvious this child was a Leo, was here to make a statement, And it just, we started, really, it's something that we laughed about because it's so clear this child was a red and a bright blue child. And that's just, it's such a simple thing. But if we can pay attention to our leanings and our tendencies, and when we are around children, certainly when they're within us with pregnancy, and that relates to fathers as well. But it's also then when the child is in their early ages, we tend to want to say, here, go over here, do that. Oh, here, no, that's not how you hold that. This is how you hold it. We have to be aware that we often correct a child or try to control them before they have shown us who they are. So the question so for example, another example would be if you are trying to get out the door for a business meeting, this is a true story, out the door for a business meeting and you can't find your 2-year-old, and you frantically come around the corner of the kitchen and you see your child pouring an entire box of cereal onto the floor. Yeah. What you do next determines how that child will see themselves in the future. And so in this particular instance, what would we be inclined to do? We're running, we're frantic, we'd be inclined to say, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Right. And if instead we can modulate our tone, and this actually happened where Mom was able to modulate her tone and say, oh, what are you doing? And her child was able to say to her, I'm making a beaver hut, Mom. And in fact, it looked like a beaver hut, Nada. And so when it looks like a beaver hut and your child says they're making a beaver hut, you almost, she sat back and said, I almost destroyed something here that I wasn't even aware was building within the child. And I'm saying that because this is a child that went on to have spatial intelligence. He was showing that he could see things in 3 dimensions. And from 2 dimensions to 3, he decades later is still outstanding in spatial intelligence. That's the intelligence of engineers. It's the intelligence of designers. It's the intelligence of those who don't read instructions when they're putting something together, and because they just see it and they put it together. So children are showing us. Howard Gardner, so many years ago, had 9 intelligences. Well, it used to be 7. Now it's 9. That he had developed some theories around, and there are schools that are called multiple intelligence schools that don't have grades, but they have portfolios for children all the way through high school, I believe now. And spatial is one way that children intake the world. Another can be kinesthetic if they're very physical. And one of my children, never walked into a room, always rolled or somersaulted or cartwheeled off of a sofa. And so to meet the child where they're at, they're giving us these clues. They may be musical. They might be linguistic, which is called word smart. They're fascinated with words. Or they might, I believe wholeheartedly in early introduction of multiple languages to children because they can handle anything. And it helps train the ear, and especially if they are if they intake the world in a linguistic manner, then you're feeding one of their gifts that can come back later. And with children, it can manifest as they pick up foreign languages easily, just even simple phrases. Some of my children, for example, grew up around 7 different languages at one point in time, simply because they had a Baba who was Ukrainian, and they had German at school and some Latin and things like this. But it trains the ear, and they're showing us again who they are. And you have children who are prone to, they just flourish in nature. They've got a special relationship in nature. They're telling us part of who they are, so that when we want to connect with them, this is a way we can do it. It's an avenue through which we can connect.
Awesome. Kathleen, I'm going to bring this in for a very abrupt landing because we have completely run out of time, but would you be willing to come back with me and continue this conversation for next week? Because I have so many questions.
I'd love to, Nada. This is
Okay.
fun. Let's go.
Let's do it again. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up for this week. We're going to be back next week with more of this conversation with Kathleen, and we will have all the information on how people can contact you in the show notes. So do not worry about that. All the information to contact Kathleen will be in the show notes. And so for now, goodbye to listener land, and we will see you next week, finishing up with Kathleen Scherek, all about the sweet spot where science and spirit meets. See you next week. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Please go to nadahogan.com for show notes and other information you can use right away. If you like what you heard here, please subscribe to our show and don't forget to rate and review right there on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your shows. And don't forget to tell your friends about it. We'll see you next week.